morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce Glenn Case for the presentation. He's going to be talking about the Port Granby project, which is part of the largest remediation project in Canada. And there's a lot of opportunity for business to take advantage of this project as well. And I'm very excited about it. Each time I see this presentation, it still fascinates me. It's a long history of this project and a lot of opportunity as well. So Glenn, and I just want to mention very quickly, for the project vendor fair, we do have one company, it's Tervita. And if Devin, just raise your hand. There's Devin right there. So he is representing Tervita, and they are actually bidding on this project. And this tender was released by the federal government at the end of September. So the bidders are getting their ducks in a row, and the deadline is, I think, December 18th. So it's a giant, immense project. So anybody has any questions about Tervita and their needs for supplies, he's there. And also the Port Hope Area Initiative Management Office also has a table, and they're there to field your questions. Okay, now to Glenn. Glenn is the Senior Technical Advisor for the Port Hope Area Initiative Management Office. He's a chemical engineer and registered professional engineer in the province of Ontario. Glenn has been involved in the Port Hope low-level radioactive waste issue since 1976. He began his involvement as the on-site project engineer for Port Hope radon reduction and radioactive contamination cleanup project during the period of 1976 to 1981. From 82 to 2000, he was involved as a technical specialist in the various conceptual design and facility siting programs. In 2001, he joined AECL, which is Atomic Energy of Canada, to assist in the detailed design, regulatory review, licensing, and construction of 2 long-term waste management facilities, one in Port Hope and one in Port Granby. Introducing Glenn Case. Thank you.
Yes, there's a show right beside it, the icon beside that one.
Our communications people will get this organized.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Thanks. Perfect.
Okay. Thanks very much. Today's going to be a bit of a history lesson. It's kind of interesting. We're talking about refurbishment, but I'm going to talk about something that we need to think about much further down the road, which is called decommissioning and waste management. I was introduced as part of Atomic Energy Canada Limited, and as of Monday, we became Canadian Nuclear Laboratories Limited. So, same job, just a company name change. So the session today is going to give you a history of what the Port Hope Area Initiative is about, and to think about long-term down the road. The project that we're dealing with is dealing with material that resulted and started about 82 years ago, when they initially found radium in the Northwest Territories and processed it at the beginning of the nuclear industry. So the Port Hope Area Initiative is comprised of 2 projects, the Port Granby project and the Port Hope project. It's Canada's commitment to clean up and safely manage historic low-level radioactive waste. About 90% of this historic waste is in the Port Hope area. The other 10% is in various locations across Canada. And I'll show you a map in a minute that explains that. In Port Hope area, we have about 1.7 million cubic meters of impacted material that's resulted from the processing of uranium and radium ores starting back in the 1930s up until about 1988. We have 3 phases in our project. Glenn talked about his 3 phases. We have 3 as well. The first deals with the environmental regulatory compliance work that we need to do, the environmental assessment, and the acquisition of a license. We've completed phase 1. We have a license from the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to do our work. And now we're into phase 2, which is the actual implementation. It's scheduled to take 8 years or so, something like that. Our phase 3 is a little bit longer. Our phase 3 is about 500 years. And that's related to the long-term waste management of this material. Disposal is not in our vernacular. It's low-level radioactive waste management. And it's Canada's commitment to deal with this waste that was created by a Crown Corporation starting back in the 1930s and culminating in 1988. And as with any major project, there are significant environmental as well as economic benefits associated with our project. So we'll do a little bit of history. This is the kind of stuff I really enjoy, and I think you kind of find it interesting. It started back in 1932, and actually, interestingly enough, when we came in and set up our booth, behind one of our pop-ups is a picture of a gentleman standing in front of a log cabin. His name happens to be Gilbert Levine, and he was one of the Levine brothers that in the 1930s, 1930 to be exact, found pitch blende ore in the Northwest Territories, way up at the top end, and I don't know whether I have a pointer here, but at the top of that red line up in Great Bear Lake. And at the time, radium was the be-all, end-all cure for everything. It was used extensively for cancer treatment. We always think of watches that glow in the dark, but that was a secondary thing. It was used around the world for cancer treatment. It's also used for early X-ray, for radiography, for welds and various other things like that. And it was worth a lot of money, about $100,000 a gram. So it was economically viable to take the rock from Port Hope, and really it was difficult to process it. We're in the 1930s, early Depression. So what to do is to bring the rock to Port Hope and to process it for the extraction of pitch blende. Pitch blende ore for the extraction of radium. So the second picture that you see there, that gentleman is Marcel Pochon. He studied under the Curies. Actually, Pierre Curie was his mentor that explained how to extract radium. And he came from England, actually, to Port Hope to assist him in the extraction of radium. But in this processing, there's a lot of waste that's generated. And so we refer to that as historic low-level radioactive waste. It's primarily contaminated soil that resulted from the processing of this pitch blende ore. There's Port Radium, that's the 1930s. In fact, there's a dog sled that's pulling the ore and taking it to aircraft and various other means to get it from there down about a 2,200 kilometer route to Fort McMurray, where that's where the most northerly railhead was. Once it got on the rail, where to ship it to was to ship it to Port Hope. Why Port Hope? There happened to be an empty seed plant that was available, a willing labor force, and water and power. So that's why it was established in Port Hope. That's what the plant looked like, starting in the 1930s. And you know, whether the mouse will work, but it's in the dead center of the picture. And you can see the environmental controls that were in place. And you can see the worker protection that's taking place in the lower left-hand corner. It's very crude, it's very basic. But it's the extraction of radium. And I wanted to bring some numbers to help some context here. 74 tons of this pitch blende ore were brought to Port Hope back in 1933 for processing. And they were able to extract 3 grams of radium. Radium is very powerful, so it doesn't take much. The next year wasn't quite as successful. They only got about 2.8 grams. The next year they got 13 grams, and they got 15 grams the year after that. So it took them some 3 to 4 years to finally produce an actual ounce of radium. And that picture that you saw with the finger, that's showing the finding little tubes of fractions of a gram of radium that are being produced. So when we have this many tons of ore that comes in, mixed with many, many tons of chemicals, the extraction of a fraction of a gram of radium, there's a lot of waste that's left over. And that waste was placed in various locations within the municipality. This can show you the kind of processing that was taking place, pretty rudimentary. And there's Marcel in the upper right-hand corner, and there's that very small fraction of a gram of radium that's finally extracted, and it's in that little tube. That tube was then sold to various hospitals around the world and was used in cancer treatment. They would actually put it into very small gold needles and insert them into the tube, into the tumors. So all this waste had to go somewhere, and initially, because this pitch blende contained so many other elements, including uranium, which at that time was only a coloring agent in ceramics, it was never put into fuel bottles. They hadn't even thought of that yet. So the waste was initially deposited on the plant site, which is that more or less central yellow circle that you can see there by the harbor. They ran out of space, so they went a little bit to the west, stockpiled it there. From there, they went up into the middle of the town and they stockpiled it. And then from there, they went up to the upper right-hand corner of the upper left-hand corner of the screen, that little circle, which was the welcome facility. They only used it for a very short period of time. So on the top of the hill, arsenic is one of the contaminants. Arsenic got into the water, ran down through the streams, cows drank it, and it's reported that cows died. So what are we going to do? Let's go to another place. That's what's bottom left-hand corner. After 1955, let's go to a little place called Port Granby, which is about 12 kilometers to the west of Port Hope. And there they established the Port Granby Waste Management Facility and received waste there from 55 to 1988. So let's go back to understand why we need this solution. In the mid-1970s, this waste and the problems associated with it were identified in about 1975. One of the big issues is radon gas. It's produced by radium. Radium is in the waste. We found radon gas in that particular school that you can see there on the picture, as well as many homes within Port Hope. Also, what was associated with it, as they tore the plant down, they would sell it, they would scrap it out. So as a result, not only did we have contaminated soil, we had contaminated building materials. So in 1976, they started the cleanup. They thought they had about 100,000 cubic meters, and then they hired the company that I was with at the time, and we came to town and found that there was a significant more quantities of these types of wastes. So we focused on residential areas, got the houses cleaned up, got the radon reduced, and took this waste to Chalk River, safely transported 100,000 cubic meters of material to Chalk River. But then realized we still have other things that we need to remediate. So there was a province-wide search that started in 1986 to see if there was a willing host within the province of Ontario that would take the waste from Port Hope and from Port Granby. At the end of that, they were unsuccessful. They could not negotiate a legal agreement with the last remaining community. So what ended up happening is Port Hope, Hope Township, and Clarington said, looks like we're going to have to become a willing host ourselves. Nobody else wants our waste. So what they did is they hired a consultant team. I was part of that group. We came up with a concept, presented that to the federal government. The federal government said, yeah, we can buy into this. This makes sense in terms of the remediation of this historic waste. So in 2001, a legal agreement was established between those three municipalities and the federal government that established the Port Hope Area Initiative. That was the long-term solution for this historic waste. Long-term solution, not disposal. Okay. So what was going to happen is, those are the conceptual designs that you can see there. That big green thing that's just below the school, that was Port Hope's design in the middle of town. It was a large percentage of the waste already there. The one to the lower center right is what Township of Hope was proposing, and the one on the bottom is what Port Granby was proposing. Okay. It's right on the Lake Ontario. In situ management. But we did an environmental assessment that was required as part of our work and determined that we really needed, in the case of Port Hope, is to consolidate all this waste into one place. 1.2 million cubic meters of material into one site. The one on the bottom was, it's better to move it away from Lake Ontario where this site is eroded. Let's put it back into a long-term facility that's back from Lake Ontario. So that's what we're about to do. So our purpose of our initiative is the cleanup and safe long-term management of historic low-level radioactive waste in Port Hope and Clarington, leaving an honorable legacy for future generations. This is in an aircraft looking to the west. This is Port Hope at the bottom, and way up in the top there you can see a little golden star. That's Port Granby. It's about 12 kilometers away. The other little star that you see in the center right, that's the Port Hope site's location. To give you kind of context in terms of what we're facing in terms of our cleanup, this is the waterfront area in Port Hope. We have about 500,000 cubic meters of material to deal with. I keep throwing these numbers out, but if you take a zero off the end, that kind of gives you an idea in terms of the number of truckloads. So I said about 500,000, so we have about 50,000 truckloads of material that we need to remove from this area. And it's in a variety of locations because this is where the original plant was that was set up by the Levine brothers back in the 1930s. Crown Corporation from the early 40s until 1988. So that's why the federal government has accepted responsibility for the waste. The harbor, it's got about 120,000 cubic meters of impacted sediment. You saw the plant when it was operating, so when they washed everything down the drain, where did it go? Into the harbor. So right now, that yellow represents the area that we need to remediate. It's kind of complicated because we have to rebuild some of the harbor walls because they're in very poor condition. We have to isolate the harbor so that we can work within it, stop the wave action and keep the fish from coming in while we're doing the work. We have new steel walls put in, we have revetments to protect the other walls. And we're proposing something on the left side that you can see, it's called geotubes. This is where the sediment is slurried, mixed with a flocculant and put into a big bag. The water seeps in and the contaminants stay inside. It's going to take a lot of those bags in order to do the work that we're proposing. That center pier area, which is that highlighted in yellow, it's also impacted. It's got a combination of two things. It has fallout from the plant, so it's radioactive material on the surface, but underneath it also has industrial waste that the municipality wants cleaned up as well. So we have another, another 50,000, 60,000 cubic meters of material to deal with on that site. I showed you up in the middle of town there was one of those yellow circles. This happens to be the landfill site. And this is where the waste was taken for a short period of time in something called Monkey Mountain. And it was a gravel pit that they had taken material out to build the harbor, a hole in the ground, so let's take waste and place it in there. But they didn't always place it in Monkey Mountain. They placed it into the landfill site. So we have about 50,000 cubic meters of material that's nested inside a former operating municipal landfill site. So in this particular case, we have about 150,000 cubic meters of garbage that we've got to take off the top in order to get at the material that's underneath, exhume it, and take it to the long-term waste management facility. We also have a couple other sites there. They built a road out of it, so the Pine Street extension needs to be remediated. And back in 1989, we built a consolidation site that's got about 60,000 cubic meters of material that we need to remove as well. So by the time you add it all up, there's something around about 200,000 cubic meters of material we need to address in this area. If you kind of look around it, you'll see there's people that live in that area. And so we have houses that we also need to remediate too. And we're working in the middle of town. So it's not down the end of an isolated road, it is in the middle of town. Something else that's kind of neat, I think, is we have material that's leaching out of the ground and coming out into one of the ravines. Port Hope on the west side of Port Hope's got a number of ravines, and this particular one has groundwater that's breaking out on surface and has arsenic and uranium associated with it. When it breaks out on surface, it precipitates and creates a solid. So we're going to put a permeable reactive barrier in there versus demolishing several houses. We'll treat the groundwater for the next 30 to 40 years through a PRB, or a permeable reactive barrier. We've already done the tests, and we know that it works. And this is our solution to a problem. You have to adapt to the kind of conditions that you're finding. We got to move this stuff around the town. And so this is the designated transportation routes that we're going to use. The green route, which is where most of it's coming from the harbor area. We've done assessments of the roads. This is the safest route to move the waste. That's those orange dots in the middle, that represents the landfill site. So that's another area that's about 200,000 cubic meters of material. And the pink is just a small little area. It's only got about 50,000 cubic meters. So these are the kind of slides that we present to the public to help explain, in terms of the existing traffic, how much is it going to affect the work that's going on, or the daily travel with our vehicles concerning in the traffic stream. Mayor Foster talked about dump trucks. We're going to need a lot of dump trucks. And it's conventional equipment that we use, but we want good dump trucks. We don't want stuff that's leaking out of the back. And we don't use those floppy green tarps that you see that kind of just cover over the topsoil, that as you're driving down the road you can feel it getting off your windshield. In this particular case, our vehicles are fully covered with tarps that are specially designed for the box itself. We load very carefully. It's quality excavation is my expression as compared to quantity, because that vehicle is not allowed to leave the site until it's completely clean on the outside. So if they spill material, it slows the production down. So the operators learn very quickly how to carefully place the waste inside the truck itself and not spill any. The trucks are monitored, they're trip ticketed, so we know where every vehicle is at any time, and all the vehicles have GPS systems in them, so we can track them as well. So Mayor Foster, that's the kind of dump truck you need to buy. Okay. And something that I failed to mention on that slide when I had the municipality with the yellow circles and the blue triangles. Those blue triangles are where the waste ended up. It wasn't supposed to go there, but it did end up there. What you can't see is a number of small little houses on that drawing. We estimate there's something in the order of about 450 properties that are going to need some form of remediation, whether it be a few truckloads of dirt, or maybe it's a set of contaminated stairs or whatever that need to be removed. And we have a program that's currently underway to try and find those houses. It's called our Property Radiological Survey. It's a very systematic process of going through the files that we have. We have probably 4,500 files on properties in Port Hope already. Go through those files. Then we do radiation measurements on the surface of the ground, under the ground. We drill holes. We collect soil samples. We analyze those samples. We do interior surveys. The young lady there has got a assimilation probe in her hand looking for potential contaminated walls. From that information, we also have a radon detector, that little black thing with those little white filters that you can see there. We use this to give us an indication as to whether there's any contamination on these residential properties. We have criteria that they have to comply with, and if they do, then they get a letter from us that say that you're in compliance, we don't need to do any more work. If we do, we need to sign an agreement where we'll actually remediate the property, remove the contaminated soil or contaminated items, and restore it to the way we found it. What's Port Hope? I'm going to get to Port Graham in a second, but in terms of Port Hope, the long-term waste management facility is going to be located within this area that you can see on the map. If you're driving by Port Hope now, you'll see that there's a big silver building, it's like a big silver barn. That's the new wastewater treatment plant that we're constructing for Port Hope. It's on the site of where the long-term waste management facility is going to be. This site currently has about 450,000 cubic meters of material on it that needs to be put into the long-term management facility. The design is such that it's a series of cells, an engineered liner system and an engineered cap. It's the first of its kind in Canada. There are many of these that exist in the United States, and we have learned from their lessons on how to build our site here in the Canadian North. It's a very well-structured facility. It has about 11 layers in the bottom. It's a double composite liner system. It's designed to contain any liquid that may accumulate in the bottom and allow us to extract it and treat it. The cap on the top has, once again, multi-components. Kind of some neat ones. The one on the top, the big brown thick one, that is to attenuate the gamma so that on the surface of the facility it's background levels of radiation. This is in accordance with what the municipality wants. They're not going to hide this site. In fact, they want to use this for passive recreation. They say, and I hope at some point in time I'll be able to take my grandkids, they'll probably wheel me up on a chair and take me to the top of it and we'll fly a kite. But it's so safe that that's what the design is based on. There's kind of a little rocky layer in there. That's to stop burrowing animals from getting in, and as well as trees. There will be no trees on this because if a tree grows and falls over, it will compromise the cap. So we want to make sure that that doesn't occur. There's various other layers that wick the water off to the sides. Fairly thick, up to 10 meters thick in terms of the historic waste. And then on the bottom, as we say, there's a multi-component liner that allows us to extract any leachate that's created. When it's done, it'll look like that big green mound that you can see there. And for those of you who are new to the area, there's lots of mounds in Northumberland Hills. So this is almost like a little drumlin that will exist in the northwest corner of Port Hope. The ponds that you see there are for the water treatment. We still have to treat the water out of the mound, but our estimates are that it will rapidly decrease. We're treating right now something in the order of about 120,000 cubic meters of water at the site. During construction, we expect that to double. Once the mound is constructed and has got the lid on the top and has an adequate time to dewater, we anticipate it will be less than 100 cubic meters of water that we'll pull from the mound on an annual basis. So we believe that's a significant environmental improvement, going from 120,000 to less than 100. So what about Port Granby? So what you need to do is come about 12 kilometers west of Port Hope on the shore of Lake Ontario, and that is the site up on the right-hand side. 30-meter bluffs. Why did they pick the site? Because it had two gorges. And you can see in the picture there's the East Gorge. So their method of waste management at the time was put a dam at the bottom and dump the stuff into the gorge. Solids would go to the bottom, the liquid decant over the top and run out into Lake Ontario. And in the 50s, we all know that dilution was the solution to pollution. Well, unfortunately, that dam didn't work and it failed. And some of the material actually ended up on the beach and into Lake Ontario. So the regulators said, you've got to do something to improve this kind of condition. So they did. They went to trenches and pits. And so these were excavated in the central plateau area, the flat area up above the bluffs. A variety of materials were put into the facility, calcium fluoride and neutralized raffinate, garbage from the plant, picker rejects, just a whole variety of things that were buried in here from 1955 to 1988 for 33 years. In 1988, El Dorado as a Crown corporation ceased to exist. Its assets were purchased by Chemical Corporation, and this facility was closed. So since that time, it's been in the care and maintenance mode. But something that's happening is that these bluffs are eroding, and they're about 30 meters high, and eventually this is going to end up in Lake Ontario if we don't do something about it. So that's why our project involves the relocation of this material, about 450,000 cubic meters of soil, to a new facility that's about 700 meters back from Lake Ontario. These are lands that are owned by Canada. 2 cells is where this waste is going to be accumulated. We're contracting in 3 phases. The first 2 phases have already been done. First is we had to build roads to get into the site and prepare it getting ready for the long-term management facility. Second contract was the construction of a new wastewater treatment plant. The facility that currently exists on the site, if I can go, can I go back? Well, you can see it down the bottom there. There's 2 ponds that currently treat the water, and this is based on 1970s technology. The regulator would like us to improve that And so to do that, we're building a new wastewater treatment plant that's currently under construction and will start to our active commissioning very soon. The big green area that you see there, that's contract C. That's the one that is currently out through buy and sell, the federal government. It's for the construction of the new long-term waste management facility and the relocation of the waste from the bottom green to the top green. In order to do this, we have a number of upgrades that we need to do. One is we need to build a series of roads inside the site itself and an underpass so that our vehicles actually travel underneath Lakeshore Road and are not traveling on public roads. You remember that map I showed you in Port Hope with the green line and the brown line and the pink line? We have to move waste in Port Hope on public roads. In this particular case, we're very fortunate. We can do it all within the confines of our site. So that means that actually in some cases we can use bigger trucks. So Mayor Foster, you have to buy a big 6-wheel articulated hauler. You can buy 2. We're going to need a few. But big 6-wheel articulated haulers are probably what's likely to be used in this as compared to conventional dump trucks. So anyway, that's what the contracting phases are associated with the project. In terms of Elliott Road, this is what we had to start with in the upper left-hand corner. It was just more or less a farmer's lane that was an unmaintained road. We upgraded that so that our construction materials can come into the site through conventional dump trucks. We need sand, gravel, clay, high-density polyethylene, geosynthetic clay, etc. So that comes in through the north, through roads that have been upgraded to accommodate us. The lower left-hand side, you can see a whole series of white and black. That's a giant big culvert that we had to build in order to improve the road to get our vehicles in. As part of that, we had some fish habitat compensation that we had to deal with, so that's what that is on the right-hand side. All part of our environmental assessment work associated with the project. This is our wastewater treatment plant in the various stages. In the bottom right-hand corner is what it looks like now. Somewhat different than Port Hope's because the waste is slightly different in Port Granby. We have ammonia and nitrate in our effluent. And so in order to treat that, we've actually built a mini sewage treatment plant. So we have a biological reactor that treats that before it goes into the main plant where it's treated by conventional reverse osmosis. We're right at this stage around, we're going through non-active commissioning, so we have clean water that's going through. The bugs are living very well, very healthily in our big tanks there, and we're feeding them to make sure that they're doing their job. And in the next month and a half, 2 months, we're going to be starting active commissioning and actually drawing water from the facility on the south side of Lake Shore. We're bringing it in and testing it to make sure that everything is working okay before we start a new big project. So where's it going? There's the mound. It's about 700 meters back from Lake Ontario. And there's my the lower left-hand corner. There's my 6-wheel articulated heavy haulers. We want to move a lot of waste in a relatively short period of time. So that's why the proposal is something along that lines. But it'll be up to the contractor to decide how best to do that, how they think it's the best way to move the material. Very similar design in the upper right-hand corner. This one has a capillary drainage layer in it. It's one of the things that the municipality requested, and we've incorporated that into the design. When I talked about bringing in the raw materials, that's that dashed blue line. So we have upgraded Concession Road 1, and we've rebuilt Elliott Road. And this is to bring in, a few 100,000 cubic meters of sand, gravel, clay, high-density polyethylene, etc. And that's actually where the construction guys will come to work down that road and work inside the plant. When we're finished, it will blend into the existing environment. It'll look like another one of the drumlins that exists within this southern area of Ontario. There are plans underway to try and do something more with the property. Once again, it's for passive recreational use. It's a linkage from the lake up into the interior areas for the wildlife, etc. So that's a little bit further down the road, but there are long-term plans that are being proposed for that now. I already talked about our 3 phases. We've completed phase 1, phase 1A, which is our environmental assessment, the detailed designs, regulatory review, and the licensing. We have a waste nuclear substance license from the regulator to do this work, slightly different than a class 1 or a facility license they would have for the Darlington facility. We're in phase 2 right now. Lots of yellow wire is going to start moving and doing the construction and remediation. A lot of work we did as part of our environmental assessment. If you want to know where the meadowlarks are, if you want to know where the nested vole, anything within this area from Port Granby to Port Hope, we've got it all characterized as part of our environmental assessment. Those are the areas that we've looked at in terms of the atmospheric environment, in terms of dust and noise, groundwater, stormwater, soil quality, sediment, the bugs, the bunnies, and the community life, the heritage, the Aboriginal interests, traffic and transportation, all well characterized as part of our environmental assessment, and we monitor that throughout the project. I really like this drawing because it kind of shows the depth associated with our waste nuclear substance license. These are the aspects of the components of our license that the regulator is requiring us to address in terms of public information program. This is part of it today. Last night we were at a Fort Granby discussion group, keeping the public informed in terms of what our project is about. Training requirements, our design documents, radiation protection, safety and health, environmental monitoring, emergency plans, security requirements, transportation and packaging. We have a cleanup criteria that describes exactly how we need to clean up this project, and quality assurance and oversight of everything that we're doing while the work goes on to ensure that it's being done in accordance with our license. Communications. Sarah is here with me. Sarah Anderson is part of our comms group. I think I'm particularly proud of what we've been able to do over the past 13 years on this project. We have something called the Project Information Exchange, where the public comes in to talk about the project, concerns that they have, and what we're doing to mitigate those issues. We'll talk to anybody. We'll come, and we're very proud of our project, and we want everybody to know what is transparent, traceable, and open. So we'll talk to anybody. UOIT, we have them come on regular tours of our facility. We have a memorandum of understanding with Fleming College. The MPs, MPPs, regular updates with them. We have newsletters that we deliver, hundreds and hundreds of those to homes and businesses. Our tabletop 3D model, we brought that today. It helps us explain what the project is to the public so they can get a context. We have a very good website. We just upgraded that to make it easier for the public to use. We've got this Clarington Board of Trade Business Networking event and our 2014 Public Attitude Survey. It's underway right now. We do this to gauge what the public thinks about our project. And we have an attitude survey for Port Hope as well as for Port Granby. And it clearly shows that the public is on board and that when they want information, they come to us because we're the most trusted source of information for the project. Economic opportunities. This is, I'm sure, what you're all very interested in. This is a $1.28 billion. That's my funding envelope. The envelope is sealed. There is no more money. It's $1.28 billion. We've been told that many, many times. So the Phase 2 contracts will be generating millions of dollars of work in the local community. We estimate between 1,000 to 1,500 jobs associated with this project. Everything from dump truck drivers, excavators, laborers, radiation surveyors, Ontario land surveyors, people that are working bed and breakfast at Tim Hortons, I can't say it, sorry, at coffee shops, and various other places that are supporting this project, hotels, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a number of mechanisms that are in place to help the community get involved with the project. OSME seminars, Office of Small and Medium Enterprise, have been conducted in the area. There's also something called the Portal. The Clarington Board of Trade and the Port Hope District Chamber of Commerce have created a contractor portal whereby Mayor Foster will be able to go and say, I have a dump truck and it's of this capacity. And I have Willie Woo, he has 2 dump trucks. And so therefore they can get themselves registered in this portal. So when the big contractors come to town, they need dump trucks. And what's the easiest way to find them? Go to the portal, because people have registered themselves there. Landscapers, surveyors, contractors, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a real opportunity for the small people to get themselves exposed. That's the wrong word for this kind of industry, isn't it? To get coverage in terms of what the project is all about. This is a list quickly of employment opportunities in terms of heavy equipment operators, drilling and blasting, business administration, we need people to look after the paper, hotel and restaurant management, security services, emergency services, instrumentation, mechanical techniques, all of the trades in terms of electrical and plumbing, welding. A lot of the stuff is based on GPS systems, so we need GIS support. Ecosystem-related programs, computer science, and water treatment. So there's lots and lots of different jobs associated with these 2 projects in Port Hope and Port Granby. I said at the very beginning, and I've got to wrap up because I'm just about 1 minute from my time up. HCL's gone through a restructuring. As of Friday, we changed from Atomic Energy Canada Limited to Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. And this restructuring was launched in 2009. It's to make us in a better position to compete on the global market. And I talked about at the very beginning, decommissioning and waste management. That's the branch of Canadian Nuclear Laboratories that I am part of. And so we are doing decommissioning and waste management not only here in Port Hope and in Port Granby, but also at our facilities in Pinawa, Manitoba. And along that red route that I showed you on that map, there are 15 areas up there that also need to be remediated as part of that historic transportation that brought pitchblende to Port Hope. We're committed to maintain safety, security, and environmental stewardship. And really, at the end of the day, it's just we're changing our name, but not our core responsibilities, our objectives, or our obligations. And that's what the East Gorge looks like in Port Granby. Thanks very much for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. It's your show.
Our show. Okay. So if anybody has any questions for Glenn,
Yeah, I could ask a question.
Sure.
Brian Keller from Port Perry. Glenn, phenomenal, absolutely overwhelming when you take a look at that. And I have a question afterwards to ask you on the Doro snuffing mining cleanup itself.
It's Doro, I know all about it.
Yes, I bet you do.
Yep.
But anyway, the question I have is in dealing with the small business and dealing with the university, the college, and in general just having so much interest in the overall community, the overall region. Last week I had a discussion with a chap that just can't find skilled tradespeople. He reminded me that we're 20% unemployed youth in the Oshawa area, 18% unemployed youth in Peterborough area. There's a disconnect somewhere along the line. When you see the tremendous opportunities here, you see what the tremendous growth opportunities in Durham region and beyond as far as the east of Metro is concerned. And we're talking about finding enough people to fill the jobs. But yet we have this phenomenal youth unemployment issue. Is there a disconnect in the halls of academia? Is there a disconnect from us as parents in leading our children into the proper trades? And this may be beyond what you can answer, but I guess the frustrating issue is I see phenomenal opportunities, but our youngsters just don't seem to be there to grasp it. What are we missing? What are we missing? Because it's up to us to lead our kids into the future. Are we missing something as parents?
Well, I think one of the examples today is the number of students that we have here in the audience. I think is very good in making them aware in terms of what's available. It said in my intro that I went to Waterloo. I had the luxury of going to the University of Waterloo with a co-op program. So 4 months of school, 4 months of work. So when you came out at the end of the day, you were, I'll say, a slightly more saleable commodity because you had like 2.5 years of experience that you gained over that period of time. Longer program, but at the end of the day, you had a little more to offer to the workforce. I know within our organization, we do hire students on a co-op basis to help us in a variety of areas. So our environmental programs, we have them in our business groups, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's, it's a matter of making the learning institutions more aware of the opportunities that are out there and soliciting. I know that, we get non-stop solicitation. Our students are ready, this term is up. We have hiring fairs, we have career fairs, and inviting the right people to go to those fairs to say, I've got 5 positions available in the following areas, and then the resumes come in, you sort through the resumes, and then you pick 5 to fill that role. So that's just my personal opinion.
If there's any other questions, oh, there you go.
Just from a safety standpoint, like in terms of the recreational area and the lawns, will they be marked as designated areas?
One of the things that the municipality wanted is to, you can hear me, I think, I don't need to have a microphone. Stand here, okay. The question was,
Yeah, just repeat the question.
the question was related to about the safety associated with these long-term management facilities and will they be marked? One of the things that the municipalities wanted to achieve was that this facility didn't need a fence. And in that context, that's why the design has that very thick layer on the top so that it's background levels of radioactivity. A fence doesn't have to be straight up and down. A fence can be in the ground in order to provide a barrier. And that's one of the concepts in terms of our design. It will have to be labeled and identified as a licensed facility, and you're within the area of long-term management site. But in the case of Port Hope, they don't want to hide that. They're proud of that, and then that passive recreation is going to complement a across the road an active recreational area where they have soccer fields and baseball diamonds, etc., that support the western part of Port Hope. So I'm not sure if I answered your question directly, but it is safe and it will be marked. It has to be because it will have a waste nuclear substance license associated with it. And it's not atypical from what's taken place in the United States. There are a number of facilities down there. Weldon Springs, for example, has been turned into a recreational area. Fernald is a recreational area as well. So.
I think as like from a governmental point of view, I think it should be fully marked so that everyone is aware of.
Oh, it certainly will be marked, and in that context, I think the municipality wants to show this is what we've done with the historic waste in our community.
Right.
And there'll be signs, and there'll likely be an information center that people can learn what it's all about. I mean, there's a very, very rich history. The beginning of the nuclear industry started in Port Hope with the processing of radium back in the 1930s that eventually became uranium in support of the Manhattan Project. So I forgot to tell you about that. There's too much in here. I've taken 5 minutes long.
That's okay, Glenn. Thanks very much
Okay.
for your time. So if anybody else has any questions for Glenn or Sarah, they have their table out there. They'll be very happy to help. So we now take you, or invite you to take a break and enjoy the project vendor fair for some one-on-one networking, and we can meet back here at 10:30. So I just want to review quickly the project vendor fair area is on the far against the windows over there, and just want to review who was kind enough to join us today, who have contracts or are working with companies for serving the Darlington refurbishment project. We have Worley Parsons, ES Fox, GE Hitachi Nuclear, we have Crosby Dewar, and Rolls-Royce Nuclear. They're out there waiting to talk with you. And we also have, like I mentioned before, we have Devin from Turbida representing the Port Granby project as well. So we'll see you back here at 10:30.